Hey, Monica. This week I thought I might talk to you about anger. Now, I had a really great idea for a video this week that I came up with yesterday. And I also came up with another idea yesterday that I wanted to do more. And since it was yesterday and not today, which meant I had a whole more day, I put off the video thing and worked on the other idea. And then this morning, there was this really entertaining distraction that I feel had over heels for, and it ate up most of the morning. And then I sat down with this idea to work it out, and I realized that there were some learning curves and some barriers to entry. And the more I worked at it and hacked away at it and tried to figure it out, the more I realized came closer to realizing it wasn't going to happen today. And there was a lot of frustration and a lot of anger. Now, it reminds me of this UC Berkeley researcher that studied squirrels, who she put a walnut inside of a box, and the squirrels who love walnuts would figure out how to open the box, and then they would do it more than one time, and they would get very excited because they would expect the nut. So they'd open up the box and they'd find the nut they're expecting because they had had a previous nut experience in that box. And then she'd put a piece of corn in there and they'd open up and they'd find the corn, and they would flick their tails in disappointment because, as she was coming to discover, squirrels express themselves emotionally through their tails, not so much through their faces like a human being does. And then she locked the box, and much like a human being whose expectations are met with a brick wall that they did not expect, there's a little bit of frustration and a little bit of pushback. And then before they knew it, the squirrel was flicking its tail like crazy and bantering the box around, cramming it into things, chewing on corners, just anything it was creatively forceful. It was creatively forceful. And they were saying that this was frustration. The funny thing is that ancient Stoic philosopher Seneca said that anger, and frustration is a little cousin to anger, is not useful. That it is actually a kind of madness, and that is very similar to what Byron Katie says about negative emotions, that they're more problematic. They don't actually serve any purpose. They cause problems. And Seneca was explaining that it was because they don't make any use of reason. You tend to cut off your access to your prefrontal cortex when you get angry, and you have the singleness of purpose. Seneca has this really good quote. He said, "Anger is devoid of self-control, regardless of decorum, forgetful of kinship, obstinately engrossed in whatever it begins to do, deaf to reason or advice, excited by trifling causes, awkward at discerning what is true and just, and very like a falling rock which breaks itself to pieces upon the very thing it crushes." So, I think about that and the squirrel, and maybe how far would that squirrel go with that box? How far would it chase that same box trying to get that walnut out? Would it ignore its little baby squirrels back in the nest? Would it push the baby squirrels out of the way in order to get this? Would it end up hurting other squirrels that were its friends? Seneca's biggest argument was that anger was not very pro-social, and that it ended up breaking a lot more things that were important in the process of trying to overcome a particular obstacle. And I think that is the key, is to recognize and to bring in the reason. So when you have the force that the squirrel was trying to push, you only push it as far as it is useful, and not so far that it ends up breaking other things. Because you can keep going after a thing to the point that it doesn't make sense anymore, and to the point where it starts to break important things to you in your life. And that is the moment I realized this afternoon that I wasn't going to do my original plan, that level of force that I had to put in to continue to make this work was going to break the video, was going to break my mood for my family, was going to break a lot of other things that matter, just as I was trying to crack that walnut box open and it wasn't giving. It was time to have my prefrontal cortex re-engage and for me to wake up and to say, I'm feeling a lot of anger, and it is not going to be a good idea for me to apply this amount of force to this project at this time. I want to know your thoughts about anger and force and squirrels. I'll talk to you next week.